everybody, my name's Talley. This is just another recent reads video. I'm going through the 5 latest books that I read, which were actually back at the beginning of June. I'm falling a bit behind. The first book that I read was The Henna Wars by Adiba Jaigirdar. This is a YA contemporary romance with a sort of rivals to lovers trope going on. And in this book we follow a Bengali girl named Nushat, and she's living in Ireland with her family, and she comes out to her parents as gay, and they seem accepting. They don't explode or anything, they don't tell her off, but they're not content with what they have learned about her, and it's sort of about the process her family goes through as she comes out. Meanwhile at school, Nushat is competing in a school business competition, and she, for her project, chooses to open a henna business. And so does Flavia, a girl who is from Brazil, if I remember correctly. I'm fuzzy on the details. So there's a lot of conversations about cultural appropriation, and there's just this growing, intense chemistry between these characters, even though there is a lot of really heavy conversation going on, and it was just a book that I wanted to keep listening to. Like, I would say I did not want to put it down. And it was just a really, really lovely romance, and I liked that it was there, it was present, but it wasn't just about that. It was not just a romance book. It hits a lot of really heavy themes like cultural appropriation and race and culture and friendship and family and relationships, and coming out when you're from a culture that isn't traditionally accepting of being gay. What I found really interesting about this book is that her parents aren't exactly practicing Muslims. Like, they're not very religious, and yet they continue to bring up religion as a reason why she can't be gay, why she has to choose another lifestyle. Overall, especially since this is a debut novel, I found the plot and the characters and the writing just all really fulfilling. I don't even know if I want to say spoilers. It's a overall fairly happy book. It doesn't end tragically, and I don't think a happy ending queer book should be a spoiler. So I'm not going to say that, but spoiler for one scene, her parents are finally trying to realize that, considering they're not very religious, that was a rather weak excuse to not accept their daughter for who she is, and so they start doing all this research to try and figure out what this means for their kid and for their family. And there's just this scene where both her parents are very intently watching the Ellen show and trying to understand things, and it's just so pure and so adorable. I gave this book 4 stars. It didn't quite hit God tier, but it was such a nice, satisfying, heartwarming book. And I loved all the conversations that were interwoven throughout it and how seamlessly it all blended together. It didn't feel like too much. And I really adored the characters, and I cannot wait to see what else this author does. The second book that I listened to was called With the Fire on High by Elizabeth Acevedo, and this is a YA contemporary that follows a teen mom. And so from what I understand, the author's all these teen pregnancy stories stop at the decision. And this is the story of a teen mom, and her daughter is still very young and she's still in school, and it's sort of seeing her dealing with this as well. The character is really into cooking and flavors and baking and stuff, and it is such a delicious book. I was salivating through listening to this book. I was inspired to want to go and cook more again. I don't know how else to describe the writing other than vibrant and delectable. It was just such gorgeous buttery writing, and I really adored it. I keep going to food metaphors and descriptions because there was a lot about cooking and food in this book. The different things that Imani, the main character, is dealing with throughout this book is really well balanced. She has a lot going on. She's got school and her grandmother or her abuela and her kid and a potential relationship and her father, her kid's father, and just so much going on. Oh, and then she also starts raising money for a class trip and organizing all that. And she has and she works. She has so much going on, and yet with all these different things coming into her life, the plot doesn't feel weighed down or overburdened or dizzying. And when it came to talking about her cooking and about food and the way she's, experiencing this great passion of hers, cooking, I love how lyrical the writing got for it. It was just poetic and gorgeous. I gave this book 4 stars. I liked the plot. It was well done and satisfying, but what I loved even more was just how amazing the writing was in this book. I think as an audiobook as well, there was just something that was added to it, having it read to you, and I would highly recommend the audiobook. There's nothing exactly that I can pinpoint why I like the audiobook so much. I just really, really did. The third book I read, I feel very mixed about. The Lunar Chronicles novella by Marissa Meyer called Fairest, and it's supposed to be Lavana's story, and I thought the story itself was really well constructed and written, and considering it's such a short piece, that it really worked well with that formula. Like, I don't feel like I was missing anything, and I enjoyed that. And I really like Marissa Meyer's, especially with the Lunar Chronicles, the way she really built the world up so well in that series. And I think it translated well here too. The person we're following, Lavana, is the bad guy. She's the evil queen of the Snow White retelling. We see how detestable and evil and like disturbing she is. And she's not supposed to be a likable character. I got that going in. I know some people didn't like that, and I was expecting that to be the issue with it, but when I went and read reviews after, I had to agree with some of them. There is spoilers and trigger warnings for rape content, but there's a really fucked up rape situation in the story. And I mean, it's alluded to, kind of spoken of in the original series, but it's very present and right there on the page in the story, and it was definitely made me feel really icky. And I don't know how I feel that it's, as some people described it in the reviews, that rape was used as a tool to highlight how evil she is. Some people felt that the rape kind of cheapened the story, that it was just too despicable of a thing. And I was trying to come to some conclusive thing to say about the story for this video, and I don't have it. I'm very mixed on how I feel about it. I would have rated the story like about 3.5 stars. I thought it was, like a well done story. I've put it down to 2 because I'm so uncomfortable with the rape thing. But I also don't definitively know how I feel about it, and I think it's okay that I don't know. There's also some criticism that the only reason why Lavana is evil is because she's ugly. And I think that's definitely part of what makes her character profile the way it is, but I think that's a very small piece of it. Like, there was so much within the book that explains why someone might end up really fucked up growing up in that situation. She was abused by her parent, like neglected by her parents and abused by her sister, and there was just such a horrible situation brewing there that it's no wonder someone as evil as her could come from something like this. And that's not to say that she is simply a product of her circumstances, but I do not think that that helped. And I don't think that that cheapened the story, that her vanity is part of it. It's a flaw that she has, and something that, if you read the story, like, it's very understandable why she is so hyper-focused on her looks, especially within the Lunar Society, where they can manipulate people's thoughts and how they see each other to make themselves look beautiful. So it's like an illusion that they can cast over themselves by controlling other people's minds. And so, of course, she's very focused on looking beautiful. The society is obsessed with it. The thing I am just so iffy on is how rape is used within the story and how gross it is. But this is supposed to be a villain, truly horrendous, disgusting, disturbing character. It's not like we're saying that rape is okay or romantic or anything. It just gives me the creeps. I genuinely don't fully know how I feel about it, and I'm going to leave it there. The next book that I read was Pulp by Talley, which I had sort of heard about a while ago and then completely forgot about. And I am so glad that I actually decided to check it out at the library. It's sort of a now and then kind of story. We have a character set in the present and a character set in the 1950s, I think 1955 to be exact. Connecting these two stories, put simply, is lesbian pulp fiction, which, if you don't know, pulp books at the time were really cheaply made fiction books that were just supposed to really intrigue people, and they varied in genre and content and stuff, but there were lesbian books being published in the 1950s, and they were these pulp books. The sort of catch to having these books published in the 1950s is that they were supposed to be a moral lesson against, being gay. So the lesbian died, or she turned straight, or she ended up really sad. So they weren't meant to end happily, but they were very significant for their time despite that. We get a character back in 1955, her name is Janet Jones, and she discovers a lesbian pulp book. It inspires her to want to write her own, and we sort of see her life unfold from the point of discovering that book, and the fact that she's in a secret relationship with her best friend named Marie, and that they live in Washington, D.C., which, if you know your queer history, you might know where that's sort of going. And then we have present day, where we have our character Abby, who is queer and is in a group of queer friends and is doing her senior class project on on lesbian Pulp Fiction, and her like gay teacher is helping her out with it, and it's like clearly a very different world. She becomes obsessed with one particular book written by a author that went by the pen name Mary in Love, and she wants to track down this author and find out who she was. I don't want to like downplay this character's struggles, but she has like very average problems. Like she's going off to university in the next year, she's in her final year of high school, and her relationship with her girlfriend has ended, but they're still friends, and it's because they're going to different universities. Her parents are going through a divorce, and she's struggling with school because of it, because they're always fighting and stuff. And so we follow both these characters' lives and everything they're going through, and the plot is working towards how they connect. It was just so well done. I mean, you get the look at this is what it used to be, and the historical event that I was alluding to was the Lavender Scare. During the height of anti-communist stuff in the States, they had the Red Scare, which was like communism, but they also had the Lavender Scare, where they had a witch hunt for queer people basically, and people lost their jobs, they lost everything. It was a scary, horrible time to be queer in America. And so we have this situation brewing, and then we have a look in the future where a queer girl can date her girlfriend openly with an accepting family, where it's not even like it's a non-issue. She goes to protests, she has a group of queer friends, she's doing her project on lesbian Pulp Fiction, and like you can see how far things have come and how far we have to go. And it's not like it's just highlighted as yes, we've arrived. The Lavender Scare is something that's just like not talked about a lot in media. Like you get maybe the Stonewall riots and AIDS, and that's queer history for you. As well, the book sort of did a bit of a meta thing with lesbian Pulp Fiction and this story itself. I mean, we have Abby in the future where she's allowed to have like just really average relationship problems. It's not a story about her being queer, she just happens to like girls and they're having relationship issues, and I really loved how mundane that was and how different it is to Janet in the past, who has to keep her relationship a deep, dark secret. The stakes are so high. Then you get like, oh, well, we're going to different universities, I thought you wanted to break up, kind of like conversations, and I really enjoyed that. Again, I don't think happy queer ending should be a plot twist, what with the history of queer literature and lesbian Pulp Fiction as an example, and burying your gays and stuff. This book I thought was heading for tragedy. It felt like it was going there, and then it just didn't, and I was so elated to see where it went and how she flipped the lesbian Pulp Fiction and the bury your gays and all that on its head and gave us a really happy, powerful ending. The one criticism I had with it, I gave this book like 4.5, 5 stars. The one criticism I've had since thinking about it, like my initial reaction was 5 stars. It was such a great book, the writing was great, the structure was great, I just loved it. Well, lesbian Pulp Fiction was very white and homogenous, and this is pointed out in the book and is a criticism that Abby makes and things like that, like in the now. What those pulp books lacked, we see Janet experience in the past. Like there were black people, it wasn't just an all-white society, there were different classes, there was a lot of scummy things about the 50s, but I think it would have been interesting to see a little bit more into the black lesbian community that we like touch very briefly for like 1 or 2 conversations. In Janet's perspective, it would have, I think, been a little more meaningful and impactful if we could have had a little bit more of that. And that's kind of the only complaint I can think of this book. It was probably one of my favorites of like this month. I really genuinely enjoyed it. The last book I have here is another YA book. It's told in verse. It's by Jason Reynolds. It's called Long Way Down. It's this really powerful, precise story about this kid whose brother gets shot, and in following the rules of his neighborhood, he needs to get revenge. So basically this kid sets out with his brother's gun to go shoot the guy that he thinks killed his brother, and we follow him in 1 minute and 60 seconds down this elevator ride as he hits every floor, and we have this kind of like Christmas Carol-esque story where ghosts paint the history of his community and him and his family in particular, sort of picture of what is leading to this moment and a decision that he needs to make. Like, is he going to follow the rules and go get revenge, or is he going to finally stop this cycle of violence and not go shoot this guy? And so we have these, like family members and people from the past that have died from gun violence and talking to him, and I thought it was very powerful. I gave it 5 stars. I struggle with reading stuff in verse a lot, like narrative verse, and I've found that I really enjoy them on audiobook, and the author himself actually narrates this, and so I think if you struggle with like things in verse, audiobooks are definitely the way to go. And having the author himself read it definitely lended more power and emotion to this already powerfully emotional story. and I would definitely recommend it. It was something that I've like seen floating around for a long time that I've been meaning to get to, and I'm really glad that I finally did. Thank you so much for watching. Maybe consider giving me a subscribe. I'll see you next time. Bye.